right? Be prepared. But the idea of being at the ready is definitely an Aries instinct that we're going to cover tomorrow when we talk about all the working parts of the masculine circuitry of the reptilian brain. And I use Ares, the god Ares from the ancient Greeks, as an example of, he's the war god, but he's also the finger on the trigger god. He's the, you're awake and aware and you're at the ready. Okay? So a way for observing ego to also empower your level of masculinity, it's the Aries instinct that it operates at. It's more manly, in other words, to be ready for anything and spring to attention when there's trouble. Okay? No delay. And here's an example of it. I'm glad this slide came up. This is Mars and Venus, or Aries and Aphrodite, in the National Gallery in London, London National Gallery. And when we do boot camps or expeditions in London, we take our students to the National Gallery, and we see all kinds of amazing symbolism in some of the great works there. This is by Botticelli. And this is Aries, this is Aphrodite. You notice the phallic symbolism here, right? You see these like animal-like cherub beings here with horns. You know, they're like goat children or something here. Representative of the reptilian brain, animal instinct. Aphrodite is the feminine principle, especially sexually. Aries is the masculine principle, also sexual counterpart. Because if you think of the notion of the killer instinct in men, I know this can get a little woo-woo and out there sounding, but it's all symbolism we're talking about. The killer instinct is that which pierces, penetrates, see, as a spear or sword or arrow, which is also a sexual metaphor as well. So the Aries, the god Aries, is also the male sexuality principle. But notice, his warlike nature is kind of somnolent. Yeah. Yeah. You do that too, huh? Okay. But his warlike nature is also under the spell of her reptilian brain influence. So you as a male, this ripples into like big cultural effects too. Did you know that nations whose male-female population tips way out of proportion male, they start wars? Even though they're not like going to go scoop up all the women from the nation they go to war with, it's this human behavior thing where North Korea, all of the North Korean women have gone to South Korea and China to find husbands because they don't want to make a life in North Korea. They escape over the border. So now you have this warlike country that's all men, and the Aries nature, waging war, killing. If we can't have sex and let the killer instinct get expressed, then let's fire some missiles. Notice one last feature of this. It's really pretty interesting. Because we're talking about observing ego and how paying attention is masculine. Being at the ready. Snap to attention, at the ready. What else do you notice in there? There's all kinds of stuff going on, but one last feature of the male instinct, the Aries instinct. Yeah? What about his hand? Not his right hand. His left hand. What's he have there? It's some sort. I asked the curator of the museum, and the curator didn't even know exactly. But we figure it's some sort of like baton. It's some sort of. It's not a weapon. It's almost like a scroll of paper, like something that could contain a scroll of paper or a baton of some sort. So what would happen if he fell too deeply asleep under Aphrodite's spell? He wouldn't be at the ready to go to war if there was an attack suddenly that occurred. I know this is stretching the symbolism a bit, but just imagine the chances you've had in your life in work, to really, quote, make a killing, or to really kill it at work, and you were dating a woman, and she was kind of bossy, needy, something that drained you. You were under her spell sexually. You wanted to please her. She's wide awake, by the way. She's awake and he's somnolent. If you were not aware that this was going on, what could happen to your performance in the workplace? If your relationship kind of spilled over into your work performance, it goes down. Well, his elbow is resting on the primitive animal instinct of masculinity, which, by the way, is awake, watching the little sort of trigger device. If he would fall too deeply asleep, what would happen? The baton would fall, he would wake up. It's the alarm. Yeah. So observing ego is being cool. Okay? It's a remarkable power. In fact, it's the only human skill that can allow change or growth. If you don't have observing ego ability, you can't grow. You won't learn anything, at least not psychological, because you don't have the capacity to take a look at yourself. Learn from what happens. Let me just take a time out from observing ego here and the Aries instinct. Kind of look at the big overarching view, these three brains that I keep talking about, make it a little more clear for you. When we do our dating trainings, for example, our expeditions, we're working in all three areas. We're teaching men about sexual attraction that occurs in the reptilian brain, emotional attraction or friendship with a woman, or a girlfriend. That's why you call her a girlfriend. Not yet a wife, a girlfriend in the mammalian brain, and move our way up to commitment, having a match of maturity and a meeting of the minds where we're true partners in an exclusive relationship. We go through all this in the Omega Male program and in the live boot camps or expeditions that we do. And in the reptilian brain, which we have established is where masculinity is located in the mind, in those programs, we're all focused on reproduction, right? Sexual attraction, reproduction. A lot of what is behind depresculinity is going to have to do with how you relate to women, with your masculinity at this level. But we also have to account for the survival variable. You guys have heard that before about the purpose of the reptilian brain, really instincts. The purpose of our instincts and the forces of evolution are about surviving and reproducing. Surviving long enough to reproduce, right? That's the driving force. Well, all of our instincts are driven toward one or the other, or both of those. And so in our dating trainings, we're going heavily talking about reproduction. In the MMP, Mature Masculine Power Program, or Masculine Intelligence in Being a Man program, MI Man, we go heavily on the survival instincts. And in this program, we're going to talk a bit about this, especially tomorrow. Those of you who are doing a dating training along with this are getting heavy instruction in that in the evenings. But this too. In fact, we're focused a little more on this, okay, the survival variable. Your masculinity helps you find a woman or date many women, but your masculinity also helps you survive. It's a very primitive energy, okay? Primitive feature. If we're going to look at depresculinity, what we've been covering so far has been all about the mammalian brain here. And remember, if the three brains are like an engine, and the reptilian brain is like your spark plug, your higher brain is like the engine casing for harvesting the work out of the gasoline, this is the gas tank. And how many times have you heard somebody who's kind of down and out say, oh, I'm just out of gas, right? Got no energy left, out of gas. So we've been building your gas tank so far today. We're going to end the day with a bit more talk about this, about the spark plug. And what would happen if you lit a spark plug, lit a fire on some gasoline, but you didn't have an engine around it? It would just explode. So this matters too. And a lot of what we're going to do tomorrow has to do with taking all this stuff that we cover today, and what do you do with it to do work, okay, to get from point A to point B, all right? So I just thought it would make sense to explain it in that way too. All right, so without observing ego, without the observing ego part of masculine intelligence, we can't look down on this terrain and see what do we have to work with, and where are we in here. So that's the importance of observing ego. And observing ego, got a couple good slides for you here. It's about being present-minded. It's being in the present moment. When you are in the present moment, that's the time frame in which you can access observing ego. If you're daydreaming about the past or about what you're going to do tomorrow or next week, you don't have immediate access to observing ego. You're kind of like, where was that? Yeah. You're kind of like Mars here, Aries, without the baton, without the alarm to keep you on guard, okay? When you're daydreaming about the past or the future too much. Here's another view of it. And it's in the present mindset that we can make decisions, take actions, use our senses, have true intimacy with another person, really truly communicate. And that is where we access observing ego. Okay, when we are mentally in the present, we are at the steering wheel of life. We're awake and aware and paying attention. When we are living in the past in our minds, and this is relevant to folks who get depressed or guys who have depresculinity, you get into the past a lot with depression. You get into mulling over what went wrong in the relationship or how you failed at work and rehash it and rehash it and rehash it. Well, take a look at this diagram, because when you get into the past too much, just rehashing instead of taking action in the present, you're on autopilot. No one is steering the plane. No one is steering the car, okay? Now, very anxious people have a lot of fear. A lot of times they have future-based fears. So they're taking themselves into the future too much, where they don't have observing ego ability, and they're worrying about the future instead of taking action right now. When you're on autopilot, that's bad, because you end up in this, sleeping Aries kind of state without the baton there to be your alarm. And if bad things were to happen, or good things, opportunities come up, you miss the opportunity.